this is going to be my full opinion. I just last night, I finished the System Shock Remake. I went through the whole thing, and I was kind of inspired to burn through the last, like, 30-ish% of it, because my friend Prox has been playing it on stream. I've been with him on his stream, watching him play it and commentating. So go check that. I'm on his stream all the time. If you want to see more like live stuff with me, just go check out one of Prox's streams. There's a decent chance I'll be on there. At Prox's Frisky on YouTube, which you might have to search. The SEO hasn't really picked his channel up. So I recommended, I'm always bigging up System Shock as a game, and he got curious about it, so he bought the remake when it came out, but then he decided to go through the System Shock, the original, the enhanced edition, which is what I recommended him to play. Go through the original first, and then the remake, back to back. So we've been doing a couple streams, playing through both games. And it's been really interesting to go back, because I haven't played the original since like 2017 or something like that. So it's really cool to go back and see how much awesome stuff is in that game. He actually really liked it. I was pleasantly surprised at how much he liked the game, specifically the cyberspace segments, which I do not like from that game. But yeah, it was cool to see someone's like fresh perspective on it. It was cool to see the game again for myself. And yeah, he basically thought that it was a very cool experimental game that pulls off a lot of its ideas really well. Which is how I would also describe System Shock. Then we started on the remake, and seeing the back-to-back comparison is also interesting to get just a little like, oh, they changed this, they changed that, because I'm also going through the remake. Well, tonight, when I'm recording this, tonight we might finish. There's a decent chance we'll finish it. Might be one more stream, because the game is a decent bit longer. It's a little bit more fleshed out than the original. The remake is. And so I personally wanted to finish the remake before I watched him finish it on stream, just because I wanted to get that experience firsthand for myself and not have that, through the lens of watching someone else play. So I sat down yesterday, free day, video's done. I'm taking a few days off. I'm going to finish the System Shock remake, because I know, about how much longer it's going to take. So I spent the day finishing the game. And okay, the remake is great. It's a fantastic remake. It adapts all, or most, I want to say 90% of the best ideas from the original. It copies the layouts almost one-to-one, with a little bit of fleshing out. If you just see like a side-by-side, you'll notice it's nothing really major. It's just like, turning this room into like, instead of just a box, it's got a bit of a shape to it, shelving and stuff they can put items on and things like that. It condenses things, like some of the upgrades are condensed into like one what are they called, augments or implants? So yeah, implants. Some of the implants have been condensed into like one thing. Some of the functionality's been shifted around. Nothing too crazy, just kind of streamlining in some places that are appreciated. The cyberspace segments are a lot better. They are much less confusing and nausea-inducing than the original, which I think just owes to the new technology, just modern hardware technology and rendering capabilities. The goals in the cyberspace are much clearer. Like you can actually it's designed much. It's been in the original. It's very like you just kind of float from wireframe room to wireframe room, and it's really confusing what's going on and what is doing what, and you have to kill the enemies. And in the remake, it's like, okay, you're gonna get plopped into this very similar kind of aesthetic, but with textures now. Very cool look for the cyberspace. And it's much more designed around combat and this sort of 3D like full 3D, almost flight sim-ish combat, where you're like, okay, you're gonna fight off like a couple waves of enemies in this little arena, then the barrier is gonna unlock and you're gonna proceed. And it's very like, you know, for what it is and for how often it appears in the game, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's not terribly complicated. There's a little couple, you know, little mechanics thrown in, like a little decoy you can throw out, or enemies with like the shield, like the ice barriers that you have to use you have to use the drill to break before you can kill them, that kind of thing, right? All in all, like a really good remake. Really good. I would highly recommend it. Here's where we're gonna get into spoilers. So skip to the next thing, if you don't want to be spoiled on the way the game ends. The ending of this game fucking sucks. It is shockingly bad and is significantly worse than the original, and I don't understand why. Okay, so here's how the original game ends. It's a cyberspace. I don't love the ending of the original game. It's like because it's a cyberspace segment, and I don't like the cyberspace segments in the original very much. But it's at least pretty short. You go into cyberspace. Shodan is there. She's like a squid. And you shoot at her until she dies, and then it's a hard cut. You can't even really tell that she's been destroyed or that you've won. It just hard cuts to the ending cutscene, and it's really weird. But at least it's not terrible. It's just a little jarring and awkward, and not the best thing. But it doesn't like ruin the game or anything like that. Here's how the remake ends. Okay, so I've described the cyberspace segments, and you can go look up gameplay footage if it doesn't seem completely clear. Essentially, it controls very much like a flight sim, but there's no set up or down. You can rotate as you'd like. You're in full 3D space. You're kind of like floating, moving around, shooting at cyber enemies, shooting at panels to like open up barriers and things like that, and going through these sorts of virtual gauntlets. That's how they're designed, right? Very different gameplay style from the real space segment, so much so that they have different control schemes that you can bind separately in the options menu. The game focuses around these two, primarily the real space segments, but I want to say it's kind of like a 80-20 split between the two. The cyberspace segments, they're there. There's like one or two at least on every level, so you're doing it somewhat often. But it's not like the most prevalent thing throughout the game. That is how the cyberspace works. So the ending of the game is still you get to Shodan and you have to plug into cyberspace to take her down, right? That's the only way that you can destroy her is in cyberspace, because her central computer is impenetrable. It's indestructible physically. You have to destroy her virtually. So you go through the cyberspace portal. You plug in. You jack in. You go through the whole sequence, and then you end up in cyberspace. And it is the same cyberspace, right? Except you're on the ground. There's up and down, and there's a floor, and you're standing on the floor, and you're not in 3D, full 3D, like, space flight sim anymore. You're on the ground, like, in real space. And then you go and you pick up a cyber gun, and you're like, okay, and you notice that you move really slowly. You walk really fucking slowly, a lot slower than you do in the real space gameplay. And you step on a platform and you go through this little transition, and it's like, oh, well, some of this looks kind of cool. Like, you look at these, like, it's almost like you're in an ocean, but it's got this same kind of like virtual aesthetic to it. Shodan is talking about, you're getting kind of like, you're hearing Shodan's mind. And then you get dropped onto this island, and here's how the fucking game ends. You walk slowly. There's these 3 islands that you step on a platform, and it slowly moves you over to the other one, to the other island. And then you shoot. Shodan's still a big squid in the middle, and then you shoot at her very slowly with your little point and click hit scan laser pointer gun. until a couple enemies spawn in, and they're the same cyberspace enemies from the regular cyberspace segments from the rest of the game, and you have to kill them, and they are not, it is clear they are not designed to be fought like this. They're designed to be fought with, like, the 3D spaceflight sim type of gameplay. They are not designed, like, there's the one that shoots, it's like kind of like a big egg, and it shoots this like shuriken that like kind of like boomerangs around. Those guys are like one thing in the previous cyberspace segments. In this, which isn't even really, it's almost like a third thing, third type of gameplay. This like shuriken whips around like 3 times and kills you instantly before you can do anything, because you can't fucking move, because you're so slow. There's like a sprint, and it go barely faster. Also, there's no life bar. The cyberspace segments always had life bars, and you couldn't save during them. You had to do them in one shot. Same thing here. You can't save, and you also have no health bar. So you get killed, and you like black out, and then you immediately respawn exactly where you are with no progress lost. It's why? What? Why even let me die? Why even have enemies here? This is just padding. There's literally no threat to the combat. It's just time wasted. That's all it is. It's just wasting time. Then you do like 3-ish waves of enemies, and then Shodan like gets the ice barrier all over her. So then you walk up to a thing on each island once you're done with the waves. Once you do like 3 waves, and then like a little orb charges up. You like walk to the front where there's this little like I don't even know, this little frame. This orb charges up, and then you don't do anything. It just launches at Shodan and starts circling her. I'm like, oh, do I have to like shoot the orb? Is it like an explosive and it breaks off the ice or something? No, it's just a marker for how many islands you've got down. You do that 3 times, and then the game ends. What the fuck? It takes like 20 minutes. It's boring. It's slow. It completely abandons the rest of the game in terms of gameplay, in terms of just like ideas. It's so fucking bad. I couldn't believe it. It left a horrible taste in my mouth. And it brought to mind, I don't know if anyone here remembers Digressing and Side Questing, the old YouTube series that was on the Game Theory channel, run by the unfortunately departed Ronnie Ani Edwards. Fucking loved Ronnie. Really, really sorry about him. He had this old episode, which I believe was called, it was a series about game design. And I believe it was called something like Space Shooter Out of Nowhere. Something along those lines. And it was basically this sort of like design faux pas. The video is about this design faux pas that he uses, he calls Space Shooter Out of Nowhere, because he's using these examples from like a couple games where there's like one kind of gameplay, a lot of like older games, like NES era type things, maybe Super Nintendo, where it's like there's like a style of gameplay. The game is one thing the entire time, and then for some reason, randomly, he could find like 3 or 4 examples of this. Randomly, the last level or something turns into a space shooter. Like, you're a ship, you gotta shoot things now. What? We've never done this gameplay before. You're throwing a bunch of new stuff at the player. They don't understand, they don't have their bearings. And then it's the end of the game, and then you finish it, and you're like just kind of bewildered. It isn't satisfying. It isn't cool. It's just kind of confusing. It goes by it introduced, and it goes by way too fast for you to get any kind of like arc out of it as a player. This is that. This is the Space Shooter Out of Nowhere. The whole game has revolved around these 2 different gameplay styles. The real space segment, which is all about exploration and a little bit of combat, using different weapons, finding different passages, connecting dots and finding these little clues, as to like how to how to find a key code for this one door that you couldn't open, finding a key card to open another door, a lot of finding things to open doors, and exploring around, right? Connecting dots. Oh, I gotta go back here. That kind of, I call it the leapfrog gameplay style, where you go one place, then you go another place, then you like, then third place, and you're like, oh, I have this, I can go back to the first place. That kind of thing. Maybe there's a better term for it. I always called it the leapfrog style. You're leaping back and forth between places, between like locations to do things, right? That's the real space segments. Cyberspace is mostly about combat, so it actually makes a lot of sense that you would want to end the game in cyberspace, because like, well, if you're gonna have a last boss, it makes more. There's some bosses, like somewhat cinematic bosses, littered throughout the real space segments. But really, cyberspace is about the combat. It's about mastering the movement and the shooting and the light mechanics. It's not throwing a ton of stuff at you, right? So it makes sense if you want to do a final boss. Oh, do it in cyberspace. The whole bridge level, which is the last level, to get to Shodan, that, in my opinion, is like the culmination of the real space. That's like everything that you've learned from real space implemented, right? In like a very condensed, quick, like go kind of thing. The security and the bridge. So if you're gonna do a combat thing, cyberspace makes a lot of sense. Why then did you completely abandon the cyberspace gameplay style that you guys reworked for this game to do something that is like the shittiest possible combination of both? It's not even really a cyberspace level. It plays nothing like the cyberspace segments. It's just like a shitty real space segment where you have a dumb little gun, and you're walking around in a very, very slowly. You don't have your augments that you can use. You don't have your whole inventory. You're not solving puzzles. You're not exploring. It is like, what if the whole game was just the real space segments with shitty, boring combat and no threat in the combat, because dying is literally meaningless. It's like a 2-second diversion. And it's so baffling to me, because like, so many assets had to be created for this. It's such an elaborate sequence. And at no point did someone say, hey, is this actually bad? No one had a second thought. Or maybe someone did, but they got shouted down or something along those lines. Like, whose idea was this to end the game like this? It's so unsatisfying. It's so, what? I was genuinely looking forward to seeing how, like, what a final cyberspace battle would be like. Like, oh man, they're probably going to do something really cool and like push it to the limit, push this gameplay style to the limit with the final boss, and it's going to be this I'm picturing this whole like multi-stage battle and all this stuff, and maybe like some cool new mechanic or something that's like kind of simple, and so it's like not too crazy, but some like cool added element, because it's like Shodan and all that, and like, oh man, because like in the original there's this thing where you have a time limit to beat Shodan in the cyberspace, because like literally your screen is filling up pixel by pixel with her face. I'm like, oh, what if you're on like a timer and you're like getting hacked, and you're like at the it's like the most dramatic thing possible because you've destroyed the station, but you still have to prevent Shodan from getting to Earth. So like, oh, you gotta beat her before she hacks you and like kills you. And this is like the last chance for the survival of humanity. Oh, this would be so awesome. No, it's fucking shitty. You're walking around on a few islands and shooting slow, like literally just uninterrupted 20-second sequence of just aiming at Shodan and just clicking the mouse, not moving, not doing it, just clicking the mouse to do damage to her, and like, I think I'm doing damage or something. Wow. what a fucking letdown for an otherwise great game. I would still recommend getting the game, but wow. Fucking, how did you... It's like you went out of your way to drop the ball. Just really disappointing. Really disappointing. Yeah. Oh, and the ending song is copyrighted, so I'll have to warn Prox when he plays it to fucking mute the stream, or he's gonna get it taken down. Yeah, but still a good game, just really, unfortunately, marred by this really bad last impression. I was thinking about how good the opening, like the medical, I was thinking about it. I genuinely think that the medical level from this game, from the first level of the game, the med bay, is maybe up there with some of the best opening levels in games. It is fantastically well designed. It introduces you to basically every single concept in the game over the course of anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, I think is probably how long you'd be there. Like by the time you've finished it, it's designed in such a way that you can only leave once you've like basically fully swept the level. You've explored the whole thing. You've been introduced to like all the major ideas of the game. The controls, the interaction, picking up items, the inventory system, the security level system, scavenging for items, the scrap system in this game, in the remake, the cyberspace segments, the kind of loop of exploring the game and finding things, the combat, like everything is in this section of finding clues to, like, you can't get out of the second room until you read like an email that tells you the code for the door. Like immediately you get like, okay, that's what kind of game this is. Just like such a good level. Such a good level. Such a bad ending. God damn it. Well, most of the game was done justice. And some parts of it were really fleshed out. I love what they did with the executive level. It's a lot less, the new graphics make it a lot less confusing, and it's easier to remember certain rooms. Things that were a little too abstract, I think, in the original are made a lot more understandable. In this one, I love the groves are one of my favorite parts of the original. There's such a creepy segment. Excuse me. I always find horror in this kind of like sci-fi horror, and then you're thrown into like this very organic, lush environment on the station in the groves. I find it like really creepy, where there's like things hiding behind the grass, and there's like these creepy mutant animals and plants. It's so good, and it's done. It's fleshed out fantastically in this game. It's the groves are much larger. There's a lot more going on. They look awesome. They look so good. There's like a new optional. Oh, dude. Okay, I guess a little spoilers. In not in Beta Grove, in one of the, I want to say Delta Grove, there's an inventory upgrade, but you can only, like an inventory expansion upgrade, but you can only get to it if you win a game of chess. I'm serious. It's you have to win a game of chess against an AI, which is it's a real AI. It's like a pretty good chess AI. I was stuck on that for like an hour, and the only reason, dude, chess makes me feel so stupid. It makes me feel so dumb, and the only reason that I won is because I cheated. I said, "Fuck it." You know what? The AI is I'm gonna fight against an AI. I'm gonna fight fire with fire. I went on one of those websites where you can just calculate the best, like what your next move should be, and every single move I just followed what the website told me. Fuck it, fight fire with fire. Yeah. But overall, really good remake. It's just a shame that it ended like that.